we welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show, Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good to be with you. Yeah, great to be with you. Thanks for joining us in person for the
It was,
you were there.
It was certainly a big event. How do you feel like it went?
I mean, as I say to anybody who asks how I'm doing or, how I feel about something, it's really more about how people in the room, people in the city felt about it. I feel like it was great to see a mix of so many different people from different parts of my life in the room. We had certainly Metro leaders, a lot of just ordinary citizens, people who pay attention to what Metro is doing. So I feel like it was especially touching to hear, first the moment of recognition a little bit from Lisa Spencer, who joined us to talk about the flood, and then to extend that a little bit to recognize the young folks who were there from Antioch High School and the wind ensemble playing for us. So lots of great touching moments, lots of important considerations. There's nothing easy about the process of governing and particularly budgeting within that, because we know it relies on the trust and confidence of voters who are almost always taxpayers, and that's one of the things that we try to honor as much as we possibly can in every decision.
I gave you credit when you were on with us last. I think it was in January, because while we might come at this differently, and I don't have your job and you don't have mine. And we don't have, we don't have shared perspective on this. However, you did not shy away from the idea that in a property tax reappraisal year, that you have to, and considering the truth in taxation and the equalization, of impact, that you have to look at the possibility of adjusting rates accordingly. And you addressed that in your remarks today. Talk about what impact that's going to have on Davidson County and Nashvillians.
Yeah, and I shared it with you and your listeners last time I was on. This is a normal part of how we do business, and I think you just talked a little bit about why this is so complicated. The state requires us to equalize our property tax rate to be revenue neutral in an appraisal year. We've had a lot of property valuation increases. I think a lot of Nashvillians have just gotten their appraisal letters in the mail from the assessor's office. We just did at our house last week. And, like many Nashvillians, our property values have gone up. Now, what's so hard about this moment, though, is we did release a budget today that would increase the tax levy from that equalized rate. But I can also tell you, because our neighborhood is one that saw its property values really spike in that period from 2017 to 2021, it's very likely that many of my neighbors will actually pay less in overall taxes. But there are other neighborhoods across Nashville who saw much of that significant growth in valuation jump this cycle, and so there will be Nashvillians who do pay more in property taxes. I think what I'm sensitive to is it's not like there's some across the board number that you can just tell everybody, hey, this is exactly how much your property taxes are going up or down, because that just doesn't really exist. It's all about every individual property and the interplay between property value and the tax levy.
So, absent those few individuals that you bring up who you say might have a decrease in overall amounts that they're paying, I don't think I did not walk away from your speech with any doubt that property taxes were going up. I mean, you made it clear that the cost of city services were going up, and as a consequence, you had to make adjustments to bring in more revenue through property taxes. That was my takeaway. Was I reading that wrong?
No, you got it right. But I will say right now today, sitting at my desk, I don't know the total number of Nashvillians for whom the total amount of taxes they pay will go down versus up. I can tell you that the overall tax levy post equalization rate that we are going to recommend is almost equivalent to the 5 years of inflation impact in the cost of governing in Nashville. And so, again, we're tracking pretty closely with costs, and that's part of the overall responsibility outlook we had here.
Wait, when you say, and I'm just trying to understand you. When you say when you're tracking with cost, that means you're going to increase property taxes consistent with the amount of cost to engage in what you consider to be essential government function.
That is exactly right.
You spoke directly, Mayor, to those who were against it, and I was among that group. I went out and I talked to a lot of those folks, and a lot of those folks are listening to us right now that are against the concept of raising property taxes. And as you say, when you discuss this, when you have reassessment, that does not automatically mean a rate increase. The state government, and I go over it all. I don't want to waste our time going over it again. It is a complex, and you noted that. It's a complex measure. But people generally don't want to pay more out of their pocket. They want the government, Nashville and Davidson County, to live within its means. And you spoke directly to those folks by saying these are the same people celebrating the chaos of federal cuts, which, make no mistake, are not about efficiency. And I want to address that topic because when you drew up this budget, you balanced to that budget, right?
That's 100% true. But within our operating budget, there is an expectation among key Metro departments, namely the Metro Action Commission, the Metro Public Health Department, where some of those recurring programs like Head Start, like the Low Income Heating and Energy Assistance Program, like what we used to have from an epidemiological lab capacity standpoint at Metro Public Health, there are full Metro positions. Like these people are Metro employees whose salaries, whose jobs come directly from recurring federal revenue.
Right. I understand. But the question is, you are required and you feel obligated to balance the budget for the city of Nashville.
No, we are. It's not just a personal feeling, although I do think balanced budget as a baseline for how we govern is a great thing.
Right. So why don't you understand
of our balanced budget approach?
Why don't you understand the concept federally of doing the same thing? Because you don't seem to understand that.
No, of course I do.
Hold on a second. We're $37 trillion in debt, and you poo-pooed that today during your speech like it was nothing. The United States of America is $37 trillion in debt, Freddie.
Matt, if you really want to get into a discussion of federal spending, we can do that.
No, you brought it up during your speech. You said
I did because we rely on those. We rely on those programs locally.
You said, make no mistake, it's not about efficiency. Then what is it about?
It is not. It is not about efficiency.
Then what is it about?
I think it is about just the level of cuts, and I think that's where my greatest
No. If the cuts on the federal level,
it's not about efficiency.
We overspent. How much did we overspend as a federal government last year? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that these cuts aren't tackling the report about $400 billion in contractual.
Then why would you insult the people who were protesting a tax increase by suggesting that it wasn't about efficiency if you don't even know how much we overspent last year, Freddie?
Because I do know that the impact of those cuts coming down was not something done to say, is this a wasted dollar? It was just, we're going to cut the dollar. Should
the federal government balance its budget?
I do think the federal government should balance its budget.
How does it do that?
Ideally, what they would do is what we do here. They would make sure that every dollar in came in and had, that the balance sheet added up.
But you said you walked past people this morning who believe property tax going up for any Nashvilleian by any amount is unnecessary, and these people are celebrating the chaos of federal cuts. And I'm trying to understand what.
And so, this is where I would say this is where you talk about, if you want to talk about efficiency, it is not just to say we are going to blindly cut some amount in some department. I think if you were really focused on efficiency, you would be measuring those dollars as a part of trying to move toward a balanced budget, not just making indiscriminate cuts. It's exactly the opposite of what we're doing.
Is it an efficient use of the taxpayer dollars to spend money suing the federal government for this purpose?
For things that are funding amounts that are already obligated, yes. Like, I do fundamentally believe that congressional authority should be obeyed. I don't think even conservative listeners would say that the White House should supersede congressional authority here.
I would agree with
that's a terrible
and I don't know, and you perhaps can help me understand this, but I don't know of any monies that have been allocated by the previous Congress that have not been honored.
We'll happily send you a list. That's the only thing we're taking legal action on, is those things that we have announced that were previously authorized by Congress that are lawfully entitled to come back to Nashville. Those are the only things. And Matt, I'll be clear with you. We celebrate the things that continue. We've had some programs that they have said 100% are continuing. We celebrate those. The places we are taking legal action are only the ones that are congressionally authorized, lawfully due to Nashville. And I will say, too, we know that there was an election in November that changed the federal landscape substantially. And when White House and Congress together have new approaches to spending, which I know that they will, we will be ready to participate in all of those grant applications. Anything that remains from a discretionary spending standpoint that aligns with what we're trying to do for Nashvillians locally, we will fully participate. But we're not going to let them change the rules on the fly.
What is the amount of revenue that you expect to increase through the property tax to pay for the programs that you outlined today in the speech?
The total amount goes up. I think if you look at FY25 to FY26 in expenditure growth, I think we're up a few $100 million year over year.
And you addressed, and I want to talk about the juxtaposition between talking about the necessity to go up in the amount, the overall amount that taxpayers will pay in their property taxes moving forward, and the availability of affordable housing. Because as you well know, and you and I have spoken about it in the past, that landlords, those that rent, have those associated property tax costs oftentimes passed along to them. So how, as a leader in the city, do you how do you work both of those concepts at the same time, providing affordable housing for those who are working on, more meager incomes in the city versus the necessity to relook at the property taxes?
Yeah, and it's one of many factors. And if we looked at the cost of any individual home in the city of Nashville, it is certainly the case that what that valuation is and the impact on taxes is a non-zero factor there, but it is also not close to the biggest factor. Typically speaking, it's going to be land value and construction costs and those kinds of things. And so we're looking at the full toolkit there of where we can offer long-term affordability, where I think if you look at it from supply side, we're ultimately going to need to make sure that that combination of infrastructure costs, construction costs, land costs, as you develop housing, as you try to preserve housing, as you use that full toolkit of sometimes incentives, sometimes grants, sometimes low interest loans, sometimes payment in lieu of taxes. We're trying to ensure that we can offer all of the things together because there's not just one approach that suddenly means you're going to see a neighborhood full of $150,000 starter homes, right? That's the challenge, is that across the board in Nashville, you do see, because of the growth of the city and the success of the city economically, that land values are up almost across the county.
You brought up a number of statistics regarding crime, and I don't dispute the statistics that you've brought up. I mean, obviously you have them, and you've worked closely with Chief John Drake in terms of tackling issues involving crime, and you mentioned that violent crime rates are down year over year, property crime rates are down year over year. I think I have that correct. Why do you think that there's a perception that that's not the case? I want you to speak to that because I want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of those stats that you brought up today.
Sure. I mean, if you watch local news, and I get asked about this all the time, and this was true when I was a district council member, there are so many times when you get asked about specific crimes, and it is absolutely the case that we had more homicides last year than I want to see. We'd love to drive to zero homicides in the city of Nashville, but if you have, say, 100 homicides, that's going to be 100 episodes of nightly news that capture that. If you have a high-profile drug bust, it both says, look, we apprehended a lot of these people, and it's same thing. If some of them happen to be, involved in a gang, then you're going to both recognize that law enforcement did its job here. This was a lengthy intelligence process that got here. We have some people that will probably face federal charges across a whole spectrum and hopefully be off our streets for a long time. But you're also finding, oh, wait a second, these people were in our community and frequently there to cause more harm in the community. So you do see coverage of it. So you see coverage of crime. What you rarely see is coverage of crime prevention. You don't see how many neighborhoods people are out walking their dogs with strollers, spending time in parks, community centers, greenways, enjoying the city where crime is not occurring, because that's just not a news story. And so I do think it's important to honor and recognize the difficulty of anybody in the city who has been a victim of any type of crime, and also not stand still. Like, we don't take these statistics and say we're satisfied. We take where we are in this environment and we invest. We're investing in the police department. We're investing in more safety and security in parks, in our transit system, in our schools. We are investing in new approaches. We're expanding the partnerships that exist across first responders and clinicians that are actually leaving police more capability to go respond directly to crime in progress. We have Chief Drake innovating within the department to create a citywide flex detail that is able to support the work that's happening on the ground in each precinct. We're opening a 9th precinct in one of the fastest growing parts of the city in Southeast Nashville. So we don't accept these, recognize the progress, also recognize that there's still more work to do. And so we're making strategic investments to try to improve safety further. I
agree with you. The concept, airplane lands safely and on time is never going to be a headline, right? And so I would agree with you that some of those good things don't get out there. I want to ask you this. You and I, Mayor, have talked many times about this, but I don't think I've asked the question in this way. If you had the ability to make the decision singularly, would you approve license plate readers for the city of Nashville?
Yeah, and I think, to your point, what I would do is I would put forward the policy that we have ready to go, ready to present to Metro Council that we are confident could not pass Metro Council right now. We would put that in place, and we would
LPRs have already passed. Forward. They've already passed.
The initial contracts have already passed. We have not been able to actually create the full implementation.
The Metro Council says that they're waiting on you.
Well, you might want to go back and check this with them, because you've brought the contracts to them for approval? We have not, but I'll tell you what.
Well, then how are they not waiting on you, Freddie?
Because did you see what happened a few weeks ago, Matt? They filed and then withdrew a resolution requesting that we bring the contracts because they weren't even close to enough votes to pass. So you can't bring anything unless they give you permission to bring it? You can bring the contracts to them, can you not? We are always in conversation with council members, and I'm telling you right now today, we do not believe the votes are there. We could put them on the record, but I'll tell you.
I just want to get you on record.
We did
yes or no? Yes or no?
On FUSIS at the end of the year, and they defeated our FUSIS proposal by one vote, and those same council members are not ready to approve the LPR.
So based on your assessment of the efficacy of LPR, I think I got a yes out of you in terms of if you had the decision. So do you believe that is an example of the Metro Council being soft on crime?
No, I believe that is an example of the Metro Council not finding a different balance of privacy versus safety, and it is why it is an important public conversation, and it is where you do see, I think, daylight between the administration's approach and the council's approach and priorities.
I just want to be clear. If I'm misunderstanding this, correct me. The council approved, there was a pilot license plate reader program that was deemed successful. The council approved the contracts to be...
Yeah, but think about this. The Metro Council approved this before the current term. And so this Metro Council is the one that has to approve the contracts that would actually allow us to implement it.
So you don't have the ability in terms of leadership. You say that you want this. Can you not convince the council that this is the right thing to do? Isn't that what being a leader is?
It's certainly a part of the function of leadership to be able to make the case. We continue to try to make the case. And I will say, council members tell us over and over again that these are not issues of local trust and confidence, that other changes in the federal and state landscape make them, they are paying attention to leadership at multiple levels right now, Matt.
Wait, so you're saying the council's not comfortable with LPRs because of federal leadership?
I am telling you
that's what you just said, Freddie. You just said the council's not comfortable because of state and federal leadership.
I am telling you that if FUSIS had been brought to the council before the election in November, I think it would have passed.
Much like our property tax increases, we're blaming Donald Trump. That's interesting.
I am not blaming our property taxes on Donald Trump.
You most certainly did. I was in the speech, Freddie. You said you heard something different than what I said, Matt. You said based on the instability of federal money and our inability to continue to depend on federal money coming into the city and increase costs, you have to make adjustments based on that. I was sitting there when you said it.
We absolutely have to be looking at budget stabilization. It's a function of the fund balance policy, not in how we're governing. But if we watch...
Hello? Huh. I am certain that was accidental in nature, that we lost Freddie's call. Let me just make sure something. No, phone lines are working. So I don't know. I don't know why we lost the call, but we lost the call. That is the most contentious interview that we've had with Freddie O'Connell, mainly because, he's calling us back. Just yank him back on. Freddie, I apologize for that. I don't know what happened there. Finish your thought. So look, man, I know this is I'm here. I know this is a contentious interview, and I understand that, and I know you've got to go in just a minute.
And look, fine. This is why we talk about the issues.
Well, but
we're not blaming Trump for how we structured the budget.
Well, I heard a different speech then, because it sounded like you were. It sounded like you were saying that because of a lack of ability to depend on federal money.
That is a factor in our budget and how we draft our fund balance policy. But you can go look for dollar, the things that are in the budget are focused on core services, and there is inflation to take account of, and that's all there.
What set me off and what frustrates me, Freddie, is that you seemed to cast aspersions at the people outside during your speech. And if I misheard that, or if I perceived it in an incorrect way.
I get it, Matt. And
because listen, I talked to those people. You didn't. You came in a different way. I talked to those people. And some of those people are on a budget, Freddie. They're fixed income people, and they live in Davidson County, and they don't know how they're going to be able to afford a property tax increase. And so it kind of pisses me off when you dismiss them as just Trump people who don't care. They care. They're worried.
I appreciate that. And I have talked to many people in the past several months about the sensitivity of whether property values and property taxes are going to mean they pay more this year or next. And we are deeply committed to focusing on affordability in the city. I'll say what I've also heard, though, and what I've seen from the communications that surrounded the people who gathered there today, who were protesting before they had seen anything about what else is in the budget, was that the signage, the level of messaging suggests that there's an indiscriminate way in which they don't necessarily want us to do anything that increases taxes. And what that means is, if you want to make cuts, we've looked at that. It's not like we're doing some some level of spending that isn't a part of our framework of core services, we are staffing up the Southeast Precinct. We're staffing up the D detail for MMPD. We are staffing up and adding technology to schools for safety. We're doing the same thing in parks. We're giving the court system more visibility into where people who commit crimes in Nashville might have had records outside of Nashville, so they don't get released as easily on bonds that don't make sense. I mean, we're trying to cover this stuff with investments that, yes, we've had to pay the costs of fiscal responsibility from years past when we did not maintain as much of a rainy day fund or didn't think about budget stabilization, but all of those things are in there. And a lot of the conversations and communications specifically from that group of people were not the kind of thoughtful conversation that you and I have had.
One of the things I like about you, Freddie, we can go have a PBR at Roberts, and we can also have these disagreements publicly, and you're willing to come on with us. And for that, I appreciate you, and thank you for being on with us today. And we'll talk again very soon.
Matt, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to talk, and I always look forward to it.